A secret hoard, lost for centuries. Not gold, not silver, but steel.
The mystery of the Castillon sword group is ongoing.
The end of a war, the last battle to be fought, a final stand to be made.
The Battle of Castillon was absolutely catastrophic for the English.
The wreck of an army. Armour, weapons, swords.
Any more bits?
The investigation of an enduring mystery. A forgotten treasure. Undisturbed, undiscovered, until now. The swords of Castillon. The medieval world. The 5th to the 15th century. Tim Sutherland is one of Britain's most experienced archaeologists. He and a team of specialists try to understand medieval life by exploring the realm of the medieval dead.
We have a classic view of the storybook medieval life. We don't hear the stories about the common man trying to keep his family alive. Archaeologically speaking, we can now focus in on the medieval dead people. You couldn't help almost look through their eyes thinking, what did they see? How did they die?
This story is one of the most remarkable in the world of arms and armour. It's truly epic in scope, from a medieval battlefield to the prestige sail rooms of the 21st century. And in between, all the plot twists a thriller writer could imagine. Except it all really happened. For more than 4 decades, it's created a trail of rumour and guesswork, hearsay and intrigue. Now we'll delve into that world. We'll examine the clues, the stories, the facts, and the extraordinary sequence of events behind the mystery of the swords of Castillon. "100 kilometres north of Bordeaux, an exhibition was held in the Château de Pont. Called La Guerre au Moyen Âge, the 100 Years' War, the catalogue showed a photograph of a medieval sword. Of the sword's origin, almost nothing was said, other than it was from somewhere in France. To people outside the international world of arms and armour, it was just another old sword. Another piece destined for sale to a museum or collector. To those in the know, it was a big deal. But if it wasn't really much known up to that point, it was the following year. The world-famous Christie's sale rooms in Geneva, a prestige auction on the 26th of April 1977, featured a selection of highly collectible antique arms and armour. There was no doubt what the star items were. Not 1, but 7 medieval swords.
I first became aware of them when they appeared at sale in Christie's in Geneva, and obviously some of them were fairly tatty and corroded, some were in pretty good condition. I think we catalogued as a group of medieval swords from the same site.
The same site, in fact, as the one at Château de Pont. But where? No one would say. A few years later, an arms and armour expert wrote about the find, and he hinted that he knew something.
The general area of the find place is known, though for reasons of security, its location may not be disclosed.
Over the following years, yet more swords were sold by auctioneers across Europe. Switzerland, Germany, London, all were said to be from the same place, still unknown. Many years later, the insider expert explained the secrecy over the find site.
In the first years of the find's existence, no mention of the actual find place was allowed. It was merely stated that it was somewhere in France. However, by the end of the 70s, this rigid secrecy had been relaxed a little, for some of us knew where the place was. We kept silence though, for obviously someone or some authority was anxious lest treasure seekers should come looking for more.
Only a few people were truly in the know. But antiques arms and armour expert David Oliver had contacts in the trade. He was able to work out approximately where the swords had come from.
Just through the grapevine, one became aware that there were, I think it was first suggested to me, they came from the last major battle of the 100 Years' War. And I didn't twig Castillon. I thought there was a big battle at Orléans, I think, prior to Castillon, so I thought it was possibly from Orléans, and then just by a process of elimination, we eventually discovered that they were actually from Castillon.
Not far from Bordeaux in southwest France, on the Dordogne River. The swords were from Castillon. Over the years, many more have come up for auction.
There was a time that there were a number of them were appearing regularly in Christie's sales. One every few months, as it were.
It's now thought as many as 80 swords were recovered. There's no other medieval battlefield with so many swords supposedly associated with it than Castillon.
The swords of Castillon, such a large number of them, of course, they become part of this legend. They add considerably to something which is already dramatic just because of the people involved, the event, and its historical importance. They are almost like sort of icing on the cake. They just make it even more remarkable.
The story has captivated collectors, historians, and archaeologists ever since.
It is one of the amazing stories about the medieval period. The swords of Castillon, where did they come from? They're classic medieval fighting weapons.
It's a fantastic story. It's a wonderful yarn, I think, about how these swords were discovered.
Tim sets out to find out what he can about the swords, and hopefully, the circumstances of their discovery. The swords are now scattered, mostly in ones and twos, in private collections and museums across the world. But there's a rare chance to see a group of them displayed together, for perhaps the first time in decades since their finding.
They're in several museums, and of course when you see them, you automatically try to imagine what it was like, one, finding them, but two, using them, which battle they're from, and so your whole of your mind starts to race.
While Tim's in Paris, back in England, another of the mysterious blades has suddenly resurfaced. In the heart of Knightsbridge in the West End, Bonham's sale rooms. Another prestige auction of antiques, arms and armour, with many alluring items, medieval and otherwise, for collectors to feast their eyes on. But even though it's almost 40 years since the first auction in Geneva, the star attraction is, once again, a Castillon sword. It's expected to fetch a high price, the same every other one of its fellow swords has done over the intervening decades.
I can't remember exactly when I first heard about these swords. It was probably very early 70s, something like that.
David Nicol, like many other medieval historians, became intrigued by the story of the swords.
Whenever these swords come up in an auction, they're always the star exhibit because of the mystery of their find and, of course, their association with the Great Battle of Castillon.
David has worked in the arms and armour trade, researching or provenancing items for potential sellers. But he's never, till now, come across one of the Castillon swords.
I never thought I'd see them, I never thought I'd handle them, I never thought I'd have anything to do with them.
The day before the sale, we were allowed special access behind the scenes. It was a chance to see the preparation that goes into such an auction.
Well, you're in the auction house Bonham's, which was established in 1793, and you're in the sale room which we have based in Montpellier Street in Knightsbridge, right in the heart of London. And for some years now, we've been having sales dedicated to antique arms and armour, and we tend to hold between 2 and 3 sales a year.
As is often the case, the sale has come about following the death of a collector. Many of the items that will be sold are from the estate of just one man.
The late owner, he was an American, he had a collection. It included 2 or 3 medieval swords, including the Castillon sword.
David Nicole finally gets the opportunity to see one of the Castillon swords for himself.
David, so here we have lot 173, the Castillon sword, that's coming up in our sale on Thursday.
That is very nice indeed. This is a business-like.
Well, it's very wieldy, isn't it?
Very wieldy.
The weight is actually not that heavy. It's extremely fine quality, and that's reflected in its general wieldiness. And you can imagine it was a very useful weapon to use.
Very typical of the type and the period. Very business-like, as you say. Wieldy, useful. Although it has a should I say, a very fine edge, it's actually a very substantial piece of metal with this essentially trapezoid, flattened diamond section.
Yes, with a medial ridge running through it,
absolutely,
all the way to the tip, and extremely beautifully made.
Beautifully made, and very rigid. I mean, that's going to give you a very substantial cutting edge, but I would have thought primarily a thrusting weapon. I mean, this is, well, to say lethal is a little bit obvious, since that's what it's for. See, there's a mark. Oh, there it is. It caught my eye, caught the light. Inlays of fleur-de-lis. That is fascinating. Somehow appropriate that it should be a fleur-de-lis, although the assumption is that these were Anglo-Gascon, it's from the losing side in the battle. Not necessarily the case, but most probably. But nonetheless, a little French fleur-de-lis. Lovely.
Interesting to speculate.
Interesting to speculate, but that brings up the whole story of the whole question of whether these really are from the Battle of Castillon.
In Paris, Tim is on his way to see a whole group of the swords.
Yes, finally getting to see these swords will be really nice.
Britain's Royal Armouries own several Castillon blades, and they've loaned them out specially for this prestige auction. It has pride of place in France's premier arms and armour museum, in the heart of Les Invalides in Paris, the Musée de l'Armée. And there are 1 or 2 old friends here too.
Pachinko.
Finally, we meet.
It's the first time these Royal Armouries swords have been back in France since their discovery. The Musée de l'Armée's own Castillon sword is the one that was exhibited at the Château de Pont, the first one the wider world came to know about.
Oui, alors ces épées de Castillon, effectivement, il y en a un peu dans toutes les collections d'armes en Europe. Nous en avons 2 ici au musée de l'armée et nous les avons assemblées à celle de nos collègues anglais du Royal Armouries. Eux en possèdent 4. Et du coup, voilà, on a assemblé 6 pièces qui proviennent de Castillon. Et je pense que c'est la première fois qu'il y en a autant ensemble dans une exposition.
But what about the circumstances of the sword's discovery? Is there anything known here in Paris about what happened back then in the Dordogne?
C'est difficile d'en savoir plus parce que justement, elles ne sont pas issues d'une fouille régulière. Et du coup, la personne qui les a trouvées n'est pas connue. Et puis tout ça, c'est toujours fait un petit peu dans la discrétion. Donc on a très peu d'informations concernant ces objets, ce qui fait qu'elles sont entourées d'une légende. C'est un peu la légende des épées de Castillon, c'est vrai. Et donc ces objets ont une aura un peu particulière dans les collections. Tout le monde veut posséder une épée de Castillon, et c'est pour ça qu'il y en a un peu dans toutes les collections.
This is the foremost military museum in France, and yet there's no record here of the recovery of some 80 swords. Archaeological relics from a medieval battle.
During the past 5 years, a number of fine 15th century swords have been appearing in the sale rooms and changing hands among collectors. They're from a find of swords dredged from the river Dordogne, near to the site of the last battle of the 100 Years' War. fought near Castillon in Gascony in July 1453.
If the battle and the swords could be linked beyond doubt, it would be completely unique.
You know where they've come from, you know roughly the date they come from, and you know which country they come from and why they're important. And if these swords are connected to the Battle of Castillon in 1453, we've nailed it.
Maybe it's time to look instead at the story of that battle itself. And it was a battle that didn't end well for the English.
The Battle of Castillon was absolutely catastrophic for the English. One of the most catastrophic, I would say actually the most catastrophic.
Since the 1330s, the rulers of England and France had fought what's known to us now as the 100 Years' War. By the early 1450s, the English had lost virtually all their possessions in France. An army was dispatched to recapture the great city of Bordeaux and its surroundings in the Dordogne, including the fortified town of Castillon.
It was the English coming back again, seeking to defeat the French army in battle and then hopefully re-establishing their position in southwestern France.
The English commander was highly respected by both sides. Sir John Talbot was a veteran soldier.
He was feared by his enemies because he was successful, he was a good leader, and he was also pretty good at getting on with the locals. And this is important because the army at Castillon was not just English. It was from Bordeaux. A large part of it was French. French loyal to the English crown, as they had been for a very long time in that region.
The alliance between England and Gascony had existed for many years, before even the time of Agincourt.
A representative of, I think, Henry V was very proud to say that the English nation was composed of 5 tongues, and he mentioned English, Gaelic, Welsh, Cornish, and Gascon.
The French launched a preemptive strike and besieged the Gascon town of Castillon. Talbot moved fast to try and raise the French siege before Castillon fell. After marching his army through the night, he launched a headlong assault on the French position.
The French had decided they were going to stand and fight, and that's precisely what they did. The English, like the French at Agincourt, and certainly like the French at Poitiers and Crecy, were full of confidence. They were incredibly confident in their ability. So they charge in there thinking, they're only French, this is going to be a piece of cake.
It was anything but. The French might not have had the famous English warbow, but they had overwhelming firepower of their own. The English were shot to pieces, cut down in droves by cannonballs. The survivors were charged by the French, and the English were completely routed. Some tried to make it to the Dordogne, and this is where the last stand took place. Talbot was killed, and his son, who led the rearguard. There cannot be many English commanders of the 100 Years' War who were defeated and yet are still commemorated on French soil. Talbot's monument looks out over the river. There was a ford here, and nearby is where 500 years later the swords are assumed to have been discovered. Were they dropped in the ford during the rout? How did they get into the river? In the early 1980s, an article appeared in print in which the author, our insider, pondered this very same question.
The article appeared in 1982. In it, I had repeated the assumption that the swords were lost in the river by English and Gascon men-at-arms trying to get away from the battlefield, having been soundly beaten by the French.
The author was an English academic who was passionately interested in swords. He's one of the great figures in historical arms and armour research of the 20th century. He wrote many books and had a wide-ranging influence on a generation of future researchers. His name was Oakshott.
The first book that I ever came across on arms and armour was a book by Ewart Oakshott, one of his Knight and series. Oh gosh, I must have been 9 then, and it wouldn't be until about 30 odd years later that I actually ended up meeting the man.
He used to lecture to schools and this sort of thing. He used to dress himself up in armour. He was only about 5 foot high.
To actually meet him was something I've never forgotten, because I've never been served cheesecake with a Bronze Age dagger before.
No, he was great. He was a real character and a lovely man.
It was Oakshott who'd been the man in the know on the Castillon swords right from their discovery. He was the insider who wrote a series of articles about them.
In each of his articles, the story, he's either found out something more, so it gets something else is added to it, and no more numbers, or we now know it was found there, or...
As new anecdotal evidence emerged, Oakshott's interpretation too steadily evolved.
It was told that the 80 swords had been all together in a box or crate. The crate might have been in a wagon. This was a little more reasonable, though how beaten troops getting the hell out of it could have stopped to pack 80 swords into a box and put it on a wagon, I don't know.
Later, the crate was confirmed as being in fact 2 large wooden barrels, the remains of which had been found with the swords. As Oakshott said, this didn't sound like fleeing troops throwing away their weapons in the river. Are there clues in what we know about the aftermath of medieval battle?
Back at the battlefield, of course, you've got a load of mixed and in some cases extremely valuable military equipment lying around. Now, booty is absolutely central to the motivation of medieval armies, because they're not paid very well, if paid at all. So if you win, survive unhurt, you can make a lot of money by collecting the stuff that's lying around. And there's going to be merchants, arms merchants, those people we all love, hovering around in the background, ready to come in and buy up this stuff.
It's an odd parallel that half a millennia later, the Castillon swords are still highly sought after by dealers in arms. Today, it's not just private collectors who buy antique arms and armour. Like any other consumer, if there's an item the Royal Armouries want for their collection, they have to buy it from a dealer. In their storerooms in Leeds, Tim gets a rare chance to see at first hand the Armoury's 6 Castillon blades.
When did the swords first come into the Royal Armouries collection then?
The swords have come into the armouries over a period of time, starting from about 1977 and through the 80s. And they have been acquired through either auction or from dealers. And what's interesting as a group is there's similarities and the differences.
So there are none that are identical?
None of them are going to be identical because they're all, of course, hand-forged. Different person might make the pommel and the cross as opposed to the blade. Even if they were for, a contract, like we know about places like the Tower issuing arms, don't we, for campaigns. So even if they were to fulfil that function, there's still going to be differences.
We don't even know, to be honest, whether these are French or English.
Oh, right. Right.
So there's nothing here stylistically. They could have been used basically all over the continent.
Ewart Oakshott recognised the variations in the swords from his wide-ranging surveys of surviving medieval weapons. These Royal Armouries blades conform to his initial grouping by 3 broad types.
Of the 80 supposedly out there, most fall into 3 categories.
The powerful-looking Type A swords are the most numerous in the group.
This one here, being the largest category, is referred to as Type A, and it has this tapering, cut and thrust diamond section, sometimes with the hollowed out sides of the blade as well, and this downturned cross and heavy wheel pommel.
Fewer in number than the Type A's, the Type B's differ very slightly in design, but they still have the same recognisable characteristics.
That would be your classic Type B with the fishtail pommel, the straight cross with the bulbous ends, and the gradually tapering diamond section blade. So more of a more of a thrusting specific weapon. And then the smallest group, of which I think is a group of 2, is the type C ones, and that's with this pear-shaped or scent stopper pommel, similar cross to type Bs, and then triple fullered into diamond section blade.
Another of the armoury's collection can be included in a third group, Group C.
What I found very interesting is this falchion type, but it's also a very, very, very fine falchion. It's not a sort of typical falchion like a clubbing sword
one, is it? No.
It is definitely a fine sword, but it's definitely a falchion as well.
You think of perhaps, well, you can think of some certainly earlier falchions that are almost being like a machete. That, as you say, is very, very fine. It's very delicate, and the clipped tip, as you can see, is quite exquisite, the line on it.
A falchion was a medieval slashing weapon. This single sword is perhaps the rarest of the whole Castillon group.
This is a gold decoration on the blade.
It could actually be a custom-made one-off, and there is none other like it.
Well, apparently, out of the apparent 80 that were known, this is the only falchion type. So,
medieval falchions overall are incredibly rare surviving, despite being quite often shown in art and things like that, actual physical surviving specimens.
It's the compact Type A sword that Tim's drawn to.
Oh, that's really heavy. But if you look at the medieval manuscripts, you quite often see this very typical, very broad blade this end and very fine at the other end. And even some of the tombs have got swords engraved on that are very similar to this.
Variants of this type occur almost right through the 15th century.
I've seen so many illustrations, but to hold it and feel the weight of it, I mean, that is...
The form is a classic medieval fighting sword.
But is there any archaeological evidence on the blades that might tell us more about their use? Maybe in a battle, even Castillon.
In your opinion, do these look as though they've been used?
Some of them on the edges of the blades appear to give evidence of having been used, shall we say. But one might see those actually as just corrosion products. Whether a nick started it or whether it is just a corrosion product is hard to say.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Again, it's got a line across there.
Yes, I just noticed that in this light, actually.
Similar to that one, isn't it?
Turn it over and just see if there's a similar line on the other side.
I wonder if that's the length of the... Oh, there is, look.
There is.
Perfect.
Yes, there is.
So that's how long the scabbards were. That's interesting. They didn't go right to the hilt.
No, you'd have your metal mount.
That's
the differential corrosion.
Wow. That's quite nice.
I think that's a new spot, isn't it?
Several of the 80 swords, and now this one, show evidence that they were scabbarded when they went into the water. Does this help with trying to work out how they came to be there?
One of the main questions is what this collection is all about. Is it a collection of swords that was going to a battle? Is this a collection of swords that had been looted off the battlefield afterwards, collected up and then taken away from the battlefield? And so is there any evidence that the style and the type and anything else could answer that question?
The only thing that's always struck me is I find, hopefully with going to battle, they would be treated well. So you have silver decorated pommels, you have gold on the blades, bustling and jostling, if you like, alongside common soldier's sword maybe. And I find that a bit odd, but I can imagine if it's being after the battle scenario, everything is being bundled and jumbled together.
Because they don't belong to anybody anymore.
That's right.
They've just been taken away and pillaged, basically.
These 6 swords are like the whole of the Castillon group. Some expensive blades, some less so. Some may be used in battle, some probably not, and some at least scabbarded. So does it sound like they were looted, or something else?
We know they were in a river, or we presume they were in a river.
But we don't know, and that's the thing. If we knew how they were actually found, their groupings even may be able to... It could be that the swords that have similar pommels were all grouped together. We don't know.
Were they in fact battle-related, or is it possible these are similar because this was a dealer in swords, and this was his collection, and for some reason he got swamped in a river and lost the lot?
David Oliver, too, has come to favour this possible explanation.
One of the reasons why I think they're not battlefield finds is that because so many are virtually, they're not identical, but of the same type. So to my mind, they've been supplies from a maker or a supplier of munitions, which have been going to either Castillon, Bergerac, or wherever, and just happened to be lost coincidentally in the Castillon region.
Can we even say the Battle of Castillon had any connection at all to the swords, given what the physical evidence tells us?
You as an archaeologist are more aware of this than perhaps others. That there was a battle just up the road from the alleged find site, so therefore these swords must be associated from the battle. Actually, there is no evidence for that. But given the traffic, it's a very busy river. It could just be total coincidence.
Back in London, another of the Castillon swords prepares to meet a new owner. It's nearly time for the sale. Bonhams have never before sold a Castillon sword. With less than 24 hours to go, anticipation is building. The starting price of the piece is £8,000. Arms and armour collecting is a popular market.
You're selling into an educated audience, if you like, and yes, they appreciate the work the quality of work, and they appreciate the rarity, and they appreciate the fact that they have a historical connection very often.
So lots of anticipation about tomorrow?
Let's hope so. We're going to see.
Auctions like these are vital for museums to acquire their exhibits, but the arms and armour trade sometimes gets a bad press.
Sometimes I tell my friends, I'm off to an arms fair tomorrow or something, and they seem to think I'm going to go off and buy a jet fighter. And of course it's an antiques or antique arms fair.
The academic world can get a little bit sniffy about the whole commercial sales, buying and selling of these beautiful and interesting objects. And personally, I feel that's most unfair. By encouraging and spreading this interest, they bring in artifacts which we might otherwise not see, which the academics might not see, like the Castillon swords.
Swords themselves have a mystique, I think. There's something about them that elevates them above all other weapons, I think.
Like David Nicol, Clive Thomas researches and writes about historical items in the arms and armour trade. And he too is fascinated by the Castillon swords.
Yeah, the first time I actually got to grips with a medieval sword was actually one of the Castillon pieces. It was just superb, and I felt very privileged to be holding it. I think at that point, that was when my interest in the Castillon group was really sparked, I suppose.
Clive was well versed in the work of Ewart Oakshott.
I was first aware of Ewart Oakshott when I read his book, The Archaeology of Weapons. I still dip into it occasionally just for the sheer pleasure of reading it. Much later, I actually met the man, and I met him probably 4 or 5 times before he died, which was, I think, in 2002.
What was he like?
Very, he was very enthusiastic about the subject, basically. Very friendly, very approachable. And I remember when the very first time I actually met him, I was introduced to him by a chap from the Arms and Armour Society. And this guy took me over to Ewart, at the Park Lane Arms Fair, this was, and said, "This guy's just written an article which you've got to see." And Ewart opened the article up, said, "Oh, I say," and there we were chatting away like we'd been old friends for decades,
Ewart Oakshott passed away in 2002. Over almost 3 decades, he'd written numerous articles and books about the Castillon blades. Yet the story wasn't complete, and still the swords kept appearing for auction. There were still blanks to be filled in.
After Ewart died, I was looking through these articles, and I thought, well, I think somebody really needs to pull it all together. And there was definitely a sense of a baton being passed, I think.
Clive continued the work of Ewart Oakshott by starting out with his own research. His aim was to try to establish the true chain of events. It still wasn't known for sure when or even how the find occurred. He was able to establish some of this.
As far as I know, we've pinned the year down to 1974 when they were discovered. They were discovered by, I think, a dredging company, as far as we can tell anyway.
But where the dredging happened was another matter. Nobody seemed to know or want to tell. Even Oakshott himself was coy on the matter in his articles.
The general area of the find place is known, though for reasons of security, its location may not be disclosed.
It was as if he couldn't really tell you everything, but he sort of cheated. He put just enough information in there just so anybody in the know could actually determine roughly where these things were found.
There was a clue that the swords were found near a ford, and this, along with the apparent date and type of the swords, is how they came to be associated with the battle.
It's often thought that the find point was actually near the site of the battle, the 1453 battle. In actual fact, it was the other side of the town, further downstream.
This changed everything. Not the Ford of Razin, which was close to the battlefield, but the Ford of Jeanbar, just under a kilometre to the southwest. If true, this put paid once and for all to the idea of defeated English soldiers losing their swords in the ford as they fled. Clive found that Oakshott seemed to be being fed snippets of detail about the find. He let slip clues in his articles.
It's interesting from the first articles where it was said that the swords were found in a wagon or something like that. And then he revised that in the following article to say that they were found in some casks, and later said that they were found in a barge. It's amazing seeing how the story develops.
A plausible picture began to emerge. Perhaps the swords have been collected after the battle, but it could have been before, or even years later. The swords were of types in use for much of the 15th century. They'd been loaded on board the river barge for transportation. By English or Gascon or by French troops, we don't know. Were they heading up or down river? Were they loaded around here? Perhaps spoils from the battle? We don't know. We do know, though, that valuable swords, packed together in a shipment, perhaps in great barrels below decks, would have been a serious commodity in the medieval arms trade of the 100 Years' War. But just how did they come to be in the river? Right up to his very last words in print on the subject, Oakshott himself wondered this.
For all any of us know, other things from that boat may lurk beneath the water. But why did the barge sink?
Clive came up with something no one else had. The Dordogne is one of France's largest rivers, and it bears witness to an incredible and potentially destructive natural force. A tidal bore, a surge of water driven by the sea.
I was quite surprised actually when I learned of this particular natural phenomenon, that nobody had actually mentioned it in any of the literature on Castillon beforehand. So I did a bit of research on it, and the way that tidal bores work. The one at Castillon is actually known as the Mascaret, and it goes all the way up the Dordogne to a point about several kilometres further than Castillon itself.
There would have been little warning. The tidal bore makes hardly any sound until it hits. If they weren't prepared, or if it was unusually strong, the Mascaret might easily have swamped or sunk a small craft. The barge and its cargo might also have drifted some distance before they sank into the mud of the Dordogne.
I find it very interesting that none of that information was ever mentioned by anyone beforehand, really.
In fact, why was so little known about the whole find? Even Ewart Oakshott stated that he had to keep quiet on the matter.
We kept silence though, or some authority was anxious lest treasure seekers should come looking for more.
Again, Clive came up with an explanation.
I suspect the authority that you had mentioned was probably the French Navy. At that point, there was a law in France which said that anything discovered in the river had to be investigated by them.
Castillon isn't too far from France's Atlantic coast and a major naval base at Bordeaux. In the early 70s, this was the height of the Cold War, so the French Navy had to be thorough.
I have it from various sources that they didn't just do a watching brief as such. They actually took pictures in the water, cordoned off an area, did a proper search. But quite what they learned is open to question, because none of that information is currently available.
Until it becomes available, if ever, we'll never know if the 80 recovered swords were the only ones, nor whether anything else of the barge and its cargo remains undiscovered. At Bonhams of Knightsbridge, the auction reaches its climax with lot number 173, the Castillon sword. The starting price of £8,000 is quickly left behind. In the end, it takes just 35 seconds.
12,000 it is.
£12,000, and another of the extraordinary Castillon swords has a new owner. What would you at Oakshott have made of all this?
I think you at Oakshott would be delighted with the interest that is being given to these swords, and he'd be fascinated by the fact that more keep popping up, because he realised that this was not a straightforward case. It was an ongoing story, and maybe he's up there thinking, hey, keep at it, you're doing well, there's still questions to answer.
There's little doubt, though, that if it all happened again today, things would be very different.
I can't help but imagine what it would be like if somebody had found those swords today. It would be phenomenal. It would be unbelievable.
We'd now know hardly anything about the swords of Castillon, were it not for the arms and armour trade, and collectors and experts like David Oliver, who commissioned the articles by you at Oakshott and Clive Thomas.
All the academic institutions use your articles as a reference.
Well, it's nice to think so. I mean, that's one of the objects of the exercise. That these are works of reference. You know, they're not something which you just look at and throw away. It's they are retained, and I mean, people are kind enough to refer to our articles, to our catalogues in auction catalogues, and articles and books which are written on the subject. So hopefully, it serves a purpose.
It beggars belief now completely as to how it was done. It just wouldn't happen these days. But the whole story, it provides a really intriguing sort of mystery, I suppose.
We've now had 40 odd years, and the fact there's still a mystery to this story 40 years on, I don't think it's a good sign. I'll be optimistic and hope it will be resolved. I want it to be resolved, but maybe this is a mystery that will just go on and on.
One day, I hope somebody is going to do a proper archaeological investigation of the site.